We are live. Hey, hey.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Lack. Thank you for joining me today.
Yes, sir. Good to see you, John.
So, I want to discuss something today on the show
Yes,
that
sir.
I don't, uh, I don't know if you've ever run across this before, but I want to talk a little bit about Roswell, but in a different way that I'm not sure a lot of people have talked about Roswell before. And that's the what I want to talk about is the aftermath, like what happened afterwards
Hmm.
with like and I think what happened afterwards kind of brings in a little bit of credibility to the story. Like you'll see what I mean, I think, when I start getting into this. But
Yeah. I read some of the most of the stuff that you sent, and I didn't know a lot of that. But yeah, super interesting.
because it's awful coincidental on some of the things that happened right after the Roswell incident. Whether you believe that Roswell was an alien ship or a balloon,
Hmm.
there's definitely some weird things that happened afterwards that one might question.
Hmm.
1 second here, sorry.
No worries, young man.
I'm gonna slap this link out there so that draw
Yeah,
some
I
more
think a
people.
few of our other guests may join us a little later if they're able.
Yeah, yeah. So if I may present the screen here, let me see here. Let me see if this works. Oh, wait.
Oh,
Oh, wait. Oh,
uh, no, that one goes there. This one
this
goes
one goes there. Yeah.
there.
All right. Do we see that?
Yes, I can see it. I don't know about the people in
There
the
we go.
chat.
There we go. There we go. So, oh, hello, Lack. Hello, Lady Steph.
Hello, Lady
Jumpy.
Steph. Jumpy.
JT. How you
JT,
doing?
hello. Good to see you.
And so what we're going to be talking about today is Roswell and the crash. The Royal Army Airfield captured a flying saucer on a ranch outside Roswell. In the crash actually happened, I believe it was the night of the 6th going into the 7th, and
Hmm.
on the 7th that's when the rancher was out and found this wreckage. And then on the 8th, on July 8th, they wrote this in the paper. The newspaper had gotten a hold of it and written it a story on it. And the reason that the newspaper called it a flying saucer is because the so the rancher went in to see the sheriff with a box of junk that he picked up from the field, from the debris. And the rancher and the sheriff both agreed that they'd never seen anything like this before. So the material that was in there, the scraps from this debris field. So the sheriff said, "Let's call the Army Air Force field, RAF, the Roswell Army Airfield." And back then, I guess there was no Air Force back then, right? It was part of the Army.
Yeah, it was the
Uh,
Army Air. Yeah,
yeah, they hadn't actually like separated it out as the Air Force yet.
yeah.
So they went over there to the base and they sent somebody out, and the guy they sent out was an expert at aerial craft. He knew airplanes. He
Hmm.
expected to find an airplane that crashed, like a jet of some kind. You know what I mean? He did not expect to see what he saw. And when he got there and examined the wreckage, he went out to the field with the rancher and the sheriff, and they actually examined the wreckage. And supposedly they then found a couple of bodies, and they realized that this stuff was not an airplane or anything from Earth. They were like, this clearly is a flying saucer, what people have been reporting on, you know. Because it's kind of funny because earlier in the year and the years prior, like, you've got incidents of these flying saucers buzzing Washington. You've got the famous Kenneth Arnold. The reason we have the word flying saucer is because of Kenneth Arnold. Kenneth Arnold was flying over Mount Rainier in Washington, and he saw a series of 9 discs flying just under his plane. And then they took off in formation. He said they kind of flew in a zigzag line formation and took off past the mountain. And while he was watching from his vantage point, he could see Mount Adams and Mount St. Helens in his view, and he watched as they kind of, you know, you could see from the shadows and other things that was going on. He could see where they passed those mountains. So he knew the distance between Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams, and all in the northwest there. You know how many miles that is. So if you watch these things fly past them at a speed that's greater than yours, you can calculate they covered this many miles in this much time. And he realized that they were flying faster than any known airplane at the time could fly. And he told the reporters that reported on it that they skipped along like saucers on water, even though they were sort of not entirely the shape of a round saucer. So then the newspaper coined the word flying saucer, and that's where we get the word flying saucer from. So this paper, the Roswell Daily Record, actually used the term flying saucer because that's what the representative that came over from the airfield base said they were. He was basically like, this isn't an airplane. This is one of those flying saucers, and the occupants that were dead on the ground looked, they don't look human. They're short little things. And apparently what they did is they packed up, they got the rest of the army to come out, and they packed up all out of the debris, and they actually went to town and they asked the coroner for some coffins that were child size, because the bodies they found were not 6 foot tall men. They were like 3-4 foot tall things. So he gave him a couple of coffins that were child size, and they brought them out, and the coroner actually went with them, and they packed up the bodies. And the coroner he was alive. I don't know if he's still alive, but he was alive a few years back, and he had recounted the story and saying that, yeah, when they packed up the bodies, they were definitely not people. He thought he was going to find a plane wreckage with some dead children in it, unfortunately. And when he got there, he was like, no, these are for the pilots. And he realized that the pilots were like these little 4 foot tall beings they were putting in these coffins. Mm-hmm. And all that material went on trucks and was taken to Wright-Patterson Airfield Base, and or what later became Wright-Patterson Airfield, because it wasn't at the time named that. And the guy in charge of that base was a guy named Hillenkoetter. And Hillenkoetter looked at all the debris and got in touch with President Truman, and said, we have found a crashed alien ship. We have a flying saucer in our custody. And they said the technology and things that we can glean from this is so advanced, like so cool, like that we're going to, like, if we could figure this stuff out, we're going to take over in the arena of war. So they immediately classified everything, and they immediately said to them, you have to change it. We can't tell people this in the paper. You have to change this story. We have to squish this story. So then the very next day, what ended up happening was that they did squish this story, and we ended up with this coming into the paper, where it says Ramey was one of the guys at the base, called into the paper, and he basically said this excitement is not justified. General Ramey says the disc is a weather balloon. So they got General Ramey to call in and say it's just a weather balloon. It's not a flying saucer. We were wrong. We didn't know what was going up. You know what I mean? And nothing to see here, folks. Please move along. You know, kind of thing.
Some swamp gas.
Yeah, swamp gas and all
Yeah.
that. And so a lot of people went along with it and said, yeah, okay, it's probably a weather balloon. You know, they showed a bunch of other pictures in the newspaper over the coming weeks. Like some of these are very famous photos. You know, you got of the general and the guys like sitting around with this tin foil and wrapping paper and sticks and stuff, and you know, and let's see, there was another one here? Yeah, there's another one here where you could see all the
They made a quick call and said, "Quick, bring us a weather balloon."
yeah, and bring us some tinfoil and sticks, and we'll pawn that off as the ship. And it's kind of like, you know, it's you really got. I mean, the public bought it at the time. Okay, they really did. They just said okay. And it wasn't actually until around like I think it was in the 70s. I want to say 79, when one of the researchers into UFOs and stuff actually was doing some looking into this thing and figured out a couple of coincidences around it. And he said that there's something more going on here, because you've got these military trained guys who, when they're in the air, okay, this isn't the people that they sent out to the airfield to look at the debris, okay? They're not schmucks. They're not people like, you know, idiots that don't know anything about aircraft. You know what I mean? These are people that when they are in an airplane and they're flying up there at like 700 miles an hour and they see another object like 5 miles ahead of them, okay? They can spot these things out there. You see a dark silhouette 5 miles ahead of you while you're flying the plane, okay? They know the difference between a MiG, a Japanese plane, a Chinese plane. They know it just from the silhouette, even 5 or 6 miles away.
Yeah.
They can tell what plane is coming toward them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if they can pinpoint what plane, they know what it's a passenger plane, they know what kind it is, they know all the different planes, the silhouettes and the way they look. And if they know that much about planes, how could they not tell the difference between a balloon and an alien saucer, an alien ship? Exactly. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like do you expect people to believe these guys are that much of an idiot? These guys are that brain dead?
I actually own, I wish I had it in hand, but I actually own one of my grandfather's my mom's dad was in World War II in the Air Force, and I have quite a bit of his stuff, but I have a thick training book of all the plane silhouettes.
Yeah, they would learn that stuff.
And it's and then there was even during the war, and I think especially in England, but they also gave a lot of that out to civilians. Yep. You know, how to silhouette different planes from the ground to know whether they should hit the siren or not. But I would imagine not just the military, but there's probably even a lot of civilians at that time that were up on their airplane identification.
And you could imagine, like, well, maybe the sheriff was too, and that's why he said when he saw some of the debris, he was like, we got something here that doesn't match what I know of airplanes. Let's call the Army field and see if they've got something that they're testing. You know, we got to check with them to see what crashed here, you know, because maybe it's one of their test planes or something, you know. And I mean, you could just imagine what kind of conversation they had before they went and called the airfield, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say hi to
this is, it's quite a few years later, but this is still the same public that fell for Orson Welles' War of the Worlds.
That's true. That is true.
So there might be. I'm just devil's advocating that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Dino Geekstrong has shown up.
What's up, Dean?
Hello, Dean.
Good to see you.
Q66. Hey, Super John and Lack. Hello, everyone in chat. Good to see you.
What's up, Ricardo?
Yeah. And let's see who else. Rummy's here. Aliens rule.
Yeah, rum.
Rummy
What's up,
is an
Rummy babe?
alien.
Yeah.
Have I missed
Hat.
the probing? Well, you got Lack being beamed up there, so I don't know about that.
Rum is only half alien, I think, right?
You just a few.
Woo-hoo.
Something's off. Why? Oh, come on! Do I have to wear one every time?
I thought you
It's
would have a
crazy.
tinfoil hat on for these
I
shows.
should wear a tinfoil hat, right? Wouldn't that
I
be
thought
fun?
about that, but I didn't want to ruin my magnificent hair.
Decided to wear wonky headphones. They are a little off, aren't they? But Jonathan, good evening. John
Mr.
Lack, the
Redmond,
alien.
hello.
That's
Good to see you.
Gerard, good to see you.
Mr. Kane.
Yeah.
Right
Gerard.
on. Hey, the gang's all here.
Yeah, we got a pretty good gang here today.
Yeah.
Miriam, good to see you, Miriam.
Hello, Miriam. Hope everything's well in your world.
Yeah. So with all that, before we get into the next part of this, with all that in mind, so you've got this crash. You've got Kenneth Arnold earlier the year or the year before, whenever it was, flying over and seeing these things. The newspaper nicknaming flying saucers. You've got a few other sightings around the country of these things flying around now, and then all of a sudden they've got this crash. You've got the Air Force coming out, or the airfield, the Army Air Corps coming out and picking this stuff up. And then you've got them going to the president's level, and then having him go, "Oh crap, we need to shut this down. Tell everybody it was a weather balloon." What do you think about all this? Do you buy in that it was a weather balloon, or do you think it was something else that's classified? There's three options. It's either really aliens, it is a weather balloon, just like they said, or it's something that they were working on. Like, let's just say they were working on the stealth fighter at the time, and the stealth fighter crashed, and they needed to cover it up because it was super advanced technology that would help them win a future war. Because this is after World War II is all done. You know what I mean? We're at a time of peace, but we're just about to enter into the Cold War with Russia. Yeah. So of course you don't want anything coming out if you got advanced.
And there was a lot of innovation.
Yeah.
For one of the bases, well, it's not necessarily a base now, but very near here is where they built the first remote controlled B-29 bombers.
Wow.
And that was I think it might have been after 47, but it was still right in that. There was a lot of innovation and research going on post-war, especially with aircraft, as that's how the war was basically ended, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't a mass invasion of people. It was just a couple planes. It's definitely suspicious. And of course you want to believe, I think most of us would care to believe that it was a flying saucer.
Yeah. Because that would be cool, right?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But it's definitely suspicious, like you said, how many people can, I think even most normal people today, right, could probably see something on the ground and go, "Oh, that's not kosher."
Yeah.
When I was a kid in Alaska, I found a weather balloon and turned it into a school project and had to report the number and take the little box into the whatever government agency I took it to, so it's hard to believe that so many people would just misidentify something as not anything that we know. And but it could have very well been some sort of secret, maybe like a drone, or that doesn't explain any kind of pilots. I think that's the if they really wanted to.
They did come out later and they claimed the pilots were from a thing called Project Mogul. And they said that, now this is the weird thing. They said, well, in 1952, we started actually testing this new type of parachute and a new suit. In order to test them, we dressed up dummies and we dumped the dummies out of an airplane to see if these automated systems would actually release the chute and save their lives if they were ejected from a plane while they were unconscious.
Right.
So Project Mogul was designed to save people's lives. But even they themselves admitted, and you can go back and look at the records, that Project Mogul didn't begin test work until 1952.
Right.
And a lot of people were like, so
5
they were
years
trying
later.
to say the bodies were that what they did is they attached them to the weather balloon, and the weather balloon was supposed to set them free at a certain altitude and let them fall back to Earth and test the system. But then they
Well,
were like, well, if you didn't start doing that until 1952, how did they crash in
how did they
1947?
crash in 47? Yeah.
Did they
And
fall
I
through
don't know
through like a time warp on the way down? You
if
know?
the and it's, especially after just winning the war and maybe having the fears of going to war with the USSR and stuff, like if if the government really was testing something, right? What would really be the harm? It's like the doomsday device, right? From why didn't you tell anyone about it, right?
Yeah,
So if you
yeah.
are testing these things, what would have been, and if it was that, why wouldn't the military just say, look, it's a classified aircraft that we've been working on. It's not aliens, but it is something that y'all aren't supposed to know about. And
Yeah, yeah.
even if it was a alien spacecraft from a different world, saying that it's a highly top secret military development, that's way more believable than a weather balloon,
Yeah,
right?
it is. Yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of the strange. If they are lying, you think they could have at least came up with a better
With a
lie.
better lie. Yeah.
With a better,
Yeah,
yeah. If
yeah.
they just said, hey,
Yeah.
we've developed a lot of cool stuff since the war. We got a lot of smart scientists from the other side over here working on stuff. We're going to the
Yep.
moon and not,
Yep.
in 20 years or whatever. And y'all don't need to know about it.
Yep.
It would have probably, a lot of people wouldn't question it as much if they'd have just said something like that.
Yeah, you're right. Like the people, the researchers who went back and looked at all the old records in the 70s that really started popularizing the crash of Roswell might not have brought it to the forefront again and brought it back into the light if they had seen, well, what it was a crashed military classified project. They would have been
Right.
like, oh, okay, I guess that's why they.
Right. And the
Yeah,
pilots were wearing special suits, and
yeah.
and then they're made out of some sort of new German plastique that shrunk.
There you go.
And
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
only
Whatever.
4 feet tall because they were burnt to a crisp.
Yeah, there you go.
You go, oh,
Exactly.
well, that actually makes sense. But a group of people mistaking a metal object for a weather balloon, and I don't know how different weather balloons were in 47, but like the one I found was literally like a giant latex balloon.
Yeah, like and I think
You
in some
know,
cases they're sort of like a really thin cloth, almost like,
yeah. It
so
reminded me of like the old clear, not clear, but the old opaque rubber gloves that the doctor used to wear that had like
there you go. Yeah.
talcum, and it had a little box on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was laying there, and like it was obviously, I mean, I was a kid, and I may not have understood it was a weather balloon, but I said, hey, what's this giant balloon?
Yeah.
And of course my dad, he knew what it was. But yeah, like you said, how could so many adults, sheriffs and different people mistake oh my God, look at this metal, this is like nothing I've ever seen. Weather balloon wouldn't even be that big
Yeah,
as
exactly.
compared to what
The
it
debris
seems.
field was supposedly covering like a few acres of land, you know what I mean? Which if you know what an acre is, that's a lot of land. And
What's that,
it just
660 feet by 660 feet or something
something like that. And it
I
was
think
multiple acres of land, and they could see this like skid mark as it came in, so it was like
yeah.
a balloon wouldn't actually leave like a mark in the ground, and it wouldn't scatter
No.
debris over hundreds of feet. It would be a balloon, a box, and like a
Yeah.
reflector. You know
Yeah,
what I
and
mean? Like,
the box was like
yeah,
smaller than a shoebox. As
yeah,
far as I remember, it was very heavy, and it was like had weird cardboard on the outside, and like
yeah.
it was not a giant mystery. The one I found.
And let's see what some of the people in the chat think. So Stephanie says, I feel like there's been too much fuss around the site by Men in Black for it to be a weather balloon.
Yeah, exactly.
Gerard, hello, thanks for the birthday wishes. You're welcome.
Oh, Mr. Kane, I was ignorant to it was your birthday. So
Yeah.
happy birthday.
Happy birthday live on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Pardon my ignorance, young man.
Why are UFOs never seen outside? They are seen out. They're seen all over
Yeah,
the
as far
world.
as I
Yeah.
know, they are. Yeah.
Brazil has a huge. Of course, Brazil is still in America, isn't it? Have
Well,
a
yeah.
South America, yeah. But they have a huge program for UFO, looking at UFOs.
Mm-hmm. Well, didn't I thought Hitler and his gang, they were like real big into UFOs, and I thought they
Yeah.
supposedly had one.
Well, one of the very first. Hold on, we got another guest with us.
Oh, good.
Hi, how you doing, Cy?
Good
Hi.
evening, gentlemen. Are you all right?
Good
Good
to
to
see
see
you.
you,
Good
sir.
to see you.
You too, boys.
To your health.
So one of the guys was asking here why Jonathan was saying UFOs outside of America, and actually I'm putting together a video that I'll put up on the channel, which is sort of like a timeline of UFO activity and crashes and things, highlighting some of the most famous things. And one of them is a crash that happened in Germany in 1933. And what's very fascinating about this crash is that supposedly the government there recovered the crash. And if you look at the treaty, now I haven't done this myself. You've got to go look. I guess we have to go look and do some research on this claim. But if you go, people say that if you look at the Japanese treaty with Germany for what they were going to do if they won the war, in there is a clause. There's actually a paragraph that talks about sharing the non-terrestrial technology that Germany had has in their possession. So a lot of people have said, what is non-terrestrial, mean? Clearly it must mean it's not from Earth, right? So you've got it right in the treaty, supposedly, a paragraph of them talking about sharing the alien technology that crashed in Germany in 1933. If Japan agrees to go into war on their side, you know what I mean? And when they do whatever their war's done and they split up the world, however they split it up, they were going to split that technology as well, So there is that interesting part of it too. So that something did crash in Germany and it was big enough for them to want to even split it, if that's even true. I mean, we'd have to go find, I think, an original copy of the treaty and probably translate it to figure it all out. But you know what I mean?
Fine.
But I've never done that.
Russian meteor was always what was that? I can't test 1918 Tuscunga, whatever. That was
the Tunguska thing.
Yeah, that was said to be a UFO.
I think it could have been a
long
craft.
time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's ever. Of course, we've been told, just like we've been told it was a weather balloon, right? But no, that wasn't. But
Germany does suffer. A few years back, I went to the Christmas markets at Germany. We went on this coach trip, so there's a few places we went, and it went up to Austria. And in Germany, they have a load of the wind turbines, the big wind things, to get all the energy.
Yeah.
And we're driving past one, and it looked like something had grabbed it by the front and crushed it. Like all these three massive propellers were all bent back. And there was all these people, and a few journalists there. And on the news later that night, they said that something had hit it. But what was unusual is that there was no debris anywhere. There was nothing to say it was a plane or anything like that. And then the story just totally disappeared. That's why I never forgot it. Because even though that was in the papers and I saw it with my own eyes, it looked like the blades had just been crushed, like you just grabbed hold of it and crushed it. And it was one of the most strangest things ever. And that was Germany, yeah.
Wow. Huh.
And I followed the story when I got back to see if there was any follow-up to it, but the story just disappeared. So I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, when stories disappear, definitely a clue, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Why totally disappear?
So to catch you up just a little bit, Si, we were talking about Roswell and whether or not we think it's real, and discussing would if it was just a weather balloon, do you think that the military guys that came out to look for it, if they can see the silhouette of an airplane in the sky and know every type of airplane that exists, would someone that smart actually mistake a flying saucer made of metal and debris that's strewn about a field for hundreds of feet for a little weather balloon that's made of like cloth and latex and have
No.
and like little pieces of sticks and
In my opinion, for Roswell at that time, if it was, well, say it was, and that's exactly what it was. There was none of this that we talk about. It was a complete weather balloon. Well, for me, how did the world, especially technology ways, change so dramatically since that event? And why would something of a weather balloon still be spoken about all these years later, nearly 70 years later, in the same regards as like, oh, if it would be yesterday's news if it was a weather balloon after a week. But people would be like, oh, well, but I think the story was so thick and what you heard of the residents at that time there. And they're also telling you that after that, the Men in Black did come to visit them. You know what I mean? But they got a nice payout from it. Each one of them got, what, $6,200 for home?
Like that. Yeah.
Why would you pay a whole society community like that for a weather balloon? You wouldn't, no. So it's one of them for me, Roswell. I was listening to you before when I came in. I've had you on since. I was trying to catch up and listening to you and what you said about the technology there. But my question to you boys is, what technology would we understand there if this was otherworldly? Outside of the fabric and outside of textile that was all materials in this ship, how would we? Because it wouldn't be wires, would it? Or it wouldn't be
no. See, that's the thing.
Stop, greens for go. How would we judge that?
That's why I don't think we have an anti-gravity craft right now, because we couldn't figure out how to make the engines work. We couldn't figure out how to replicate it. And the little stuff that we got, like people claim that even the glue that's in a Post-it note came from something that was on the ship. It was like a revolutionary glue that like they were like, oh my gosh, this sticks, and you could peel it off and it sticks again. Like prior to finding the Roswell crash, glue was glue. You couldn't get it back off if you glued something together. You know what I mean? And then we got fiber optics out of it. So maybe they didn't have wires. Maybe the whole ship was made of fiber optics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
like a sensory sort of touch sort of thing where.
Yeah. And then they say that there were lenses in the ships that clearly the aliens must have used. And when they put the lenses over them, they could see in other spectrums. And that's where we got night vision from. Mm-hmm. They claim that those lenses were sent to a lab, and that lab eventually created what we have today as night vision and things like that. And heat vision, like the FLIR cameras and stuff. Like all that stuff came from these lenses that could switch in different wavelengths and let the occupants see in the dark or see heat waves or things like that, and all that stuff came from that. So we were able to figure out, supposedly we were able to figure out little things, but not the main. It's kind of like if you were given a nuclear reactor back in the Stone Age, they might know, okay, this thing's producing power, but we have no idea how to replicate it or how. You know what I mean? Because
technology today, how many times do you get a mobile phone, a smartphone, and you've had it 2 years, and then 2 years later somebody show you something that your phone does, and you'll go, bloody hell, I never knew my phone did that.
No idea.
It's that constant learning of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that in 70 years just we could understand what sort of actual, again, like I said, fabrics, materials, all that sort of stuff I do get. We can go into the DNA, them sort of structures.
Yeah.
But for the technology that they had of how to get here, the travel that they used, what energy do they use? I think that's a long way coming in a sense. Like what you said about the floating cars and stuff, and if we believe that a man was on the moon, that was only 65 years after we put a man in the air. Yeah. So we would have had that technology if that was the case. Do you know what I mean? If we could understand it. I'm not saying it wasn't there. I'm saying it's how do we fathom it if it's otherworldly? Do you know, it's
And then
Well,
we're
same
looking at
as
some of those people in the
reverse.
chat, what they have to say. JT says, imagine traveling millions of light years only to have a fender bender in Roswell. Yeah. And that is a big argument for it not being an alien ship, because if they can bend the fabric of time and space and get across like from solar system to solar system, or maybe even galaxy to galaxy, like how can that kind of technology suddenly crash on a planet? You'd think
Yeah.
they'd have some kind of device or thing that would just like prevent them from being able to crash. Like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Unless they've never encountered an atmosphere such as ours.
Yeah.
well, I mean,
This could have been their
that could be
first run, yeah, or anything,
Yeah.
or
who
yeah.
I
knows?
was gonna say, post 47, you also saw a huge advancement in metallurgy.
Oh yeah, that's
There
true.
was a lot, which would at least be one of the tangible things that us as humans could possibly learn and understand, right? If we can, if we can melt the metal down and figure out what temperature this melts and that melts, and we can identify it, right? And then be able to recreate it, whether it be like tungsten or titanium or
Yeah.
so. I definitely
Yeah.
believe if the spacecraft was real, the art of metallurgy definitely gained from it, because it would have been around that same time. I missed that last comment. I see you guys smiling.
Sorry, it's Smith Lord.
That's
Hey, how
great.
you doing, Chris? Says don't trust Cy. The stuff he smokes and sees elephants all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And Steph's bringing up also people around the world have similar experiences. They have described very similar things by people who have never researched or looked into it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a extremely good point, Lady Steph. And I always bring that up in almost all of these mystery things, right? Whether it's Bigfoot or cryptids or Loch Ness monster or aliens. If tens of thousands of people have seen stuff over the 12,000 years of human history,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to. We made the analogy last time. If two of us see the third one commit a crime and go to court, well, that's an
Yeah.
eyewitness, and that's the facts. But tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people throughout history can see lights in the sky or some sort of cryptid or Bigfoot, and there's cave drawings of flying saucers, and but modern people go, no, that's total blow. That can't be right.
I just think what most people get away with now with filming, and especially like they said that since COVID, that UFO sightings have gone up 62% since COVID, since we're all staying in and nothing to do, all out in our gardens, just filming stuff. 62% UFOs have sighted these past 5 years.
Wow.
And I think to myself that, they could be easily debatable in pictures and videos, but now you'll get 4 or 5 people in this one community filming the same thing from a different angle.
Yeah,
because of that, it's very hard now to debunk. Yeah.
To be fair, side, the sightings of talking pink elephants have also gone up 60% since
If I travel all the distance to visit a planet, I sure as hell do a lot more than ferret around the skies of yokels off their tots on moonshine. Aliens exist, but they probably wouldn't come here. I get you. Yeah.
Well, they'd have to come once to know that they didn't want to come back, right?
Is that it? Yeah, yeah.
They'd have to come once.
The Nazi bell conspiracy. Yeah, the Nazi bell. And, and supposedly that bell crashed in Kicksburg, Pennsylvania, eventually.
Well, the Germans were also known at that time to create a lot of things, make a lot of things up, make them look like they're going to take over the war. They put extensions on trains, they built massive spaceships, they did everything, put that swastika on and said, this is how we win the war, when really it was a climbing frame. It was like,
Yeah, well, anything to instill, and that's what I was telling John earlier, like instead of saying it was a weather balloon, why not just come out and say, oh, well, we're working on some high level stuff. And, you're not supposed to know about it. It would have been a much more believable.
I like Chris here.
Yeah.
Like, who the hell is saying post-it notes are alien? I'd like to meet them. Yeah, that'd be funny.
But it's funny, it's things like that does make you think, well, where? Again, it's since that crash, how much, for me, the world changed in tech-wise. In it's like before that, previously, it took like decades for things to come around. And it seems like today, and especially since after Roswell, we get 3 or 4 big inventions a decade. You know what I mean? Every 10 years is 4 or 5 things that are just changed the world.
Yeah. Hey, TJ, how you doing?
Hey, TJ.
Would it be fair to
NJT.
say it makes more sense that the military would cause confusion and get the public to believe they have alien tech while they develop secret military projects? Like reverse it? You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah. And I think there are some guys that claim that did happen at certain points throughout our history where they were using the alien or the UFO phenomenon to cover up something like the stealth bomber or things like that, because then they could fly the stealth bomber over some of the cities and test it out and just be like, no, you guys saw a UFO. I don't know what you're talking about. That wasn't our classified project. You guys saw a UFO, you know?
Well, I believe, listen, every great magician dazzles you here, and it's all happening here. Do you know what I mean? So I believe that sort of thing, yeah.
He's like, Post-it notes are aliens. Yeah. Good, thanks. Yeah. There's a lot of drunk psychic mechanics just laughing their socks off building stuff for people to film. Yeah, that could be too, you know?
Mhm.
I mean, you think about it, if you just take like a small drone, like especially today, if you take a small drone that can fly and it can lift a certain amount of weight, you know, like some of these little cameras and things, these little drones can lift, I don't know what, like 20, 30 pounds. You know, they're pretty good things. Well, strip it down to the bare bones. So it's just a little frame and those 4 propellers and the motor, take all the other stuff off. And then what you do is build a round frame around it, build a sort of dome-like thing, put lights around it. So they're going, boo, 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 boo. And when you get that thing up in the air and no one can see the drone, they just see those lights in a certain pattern, I think you could pull off an alien ship hoax like real easy. You know what I mean? Like, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I mean, look at the size of those that you've been seeing over America. Some of them have been massive, haven't they, them drones?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, some of those are like, those are like 20 or 30 feet. So I think those are police or military. They can't be.
But and they definitely all still like look like what we know as a drone.
Yeah,
You know, they have
when
the
you see them during the day,
they don't look very, you know, UFO is an unidentified flying object, right? It doesn't necessarily mean
alien. Yeah.
Little people from Mars or wherever. You know, I think a lot of people get that.
Yeah.
Wildly contradicting himself. 1 minute next it's drones. Pick a lane. I like to give both sides of the argument. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to look at all possibilities to try to come to some conclusion. That's for sure.
But there is something that I do find fascinating related to Roswell, and I do understand that I don't know everything about United States history. I don't know the reasoning behind certain things and why things are done at a time when they're done and things like that. But this has always fascinated me related to Roswell, and I'll share the screen right now and get this up on the screen. So you basically have, I did a little short that I threw up on the channel that sort of briefly touches on this, and it's just like, coincidence, you decide. And the thing is that, so you've got July 6th, 7th, whatever it was, where the thing crashed. They discover the material. They go to the rancher goes to the sheriff. The sheriff goes to the airfield. They send a guy out. He looks at it and tells the paper on the 8th, we have a crashed flying saucer. We finally captured one. We're bringing the debris back to the base. We're going to take a look at it. And then on the 9th, it has worked its way all the way up to the presidential level. President Truman says, oh, we got to stop this. Tell everybody it was a weather balloon. So they make something up and tell everybody it was a weather balloon. And then a couple weeks later, on July 26th of 1947, Truman says, we have to create the CIA, the NSA, and we now have a thing called national security. We have to hide this for the for the purposes of national security. So the National Security Act was signed into as a law. Isn't that one hell of a weird coincidence? If it was a balloon, why would you suddenly have the need for secrecy on that level? Why would you suddenly go, oh my gosh, one of our balloons crashed in a field? We have to like create a national security act to hide the fact that we have these weather balloons. Let's form the CIA so that we can hide the fact that these weather balloons are going up, and that we have to have this intelligence thing that, you know what I mean, and create all these departments of secrecy around a freaking balloon.
Also, remember the cost of this as well. Just after the war, the cost of this must have been millions of dollars to put together, and taxpayers' money trying selling this to the public.
And the other weird thing about this is, in the early 40s, I don't remember, was the first bomb like 1942 or something, or was it 39? I can't remember when it was, but we were testing and dropping atomic bombs in the desert, and they saw no reason to keep that secret at this level. You know what I mean? And then they used it in the war and ended the war with it. But yet a weather balloon deserves this kind of secrecy? An atomic bomb? No, we don't need to worry about that. But a weather balloon, we have to keep it this secret and create the CIA and all this stuff. So it seems awful weird, awful coincidental that something happens at Roswell and someone at Truman's level of president says, whoa, we need an entire organization to keep all this crap secret. You know what I mean? Like, so
I'm just thinking as well of the space boom, if you'll have me, of the 50s, comic books and kids wearing astronaut helmets, and space in the 50s was just like through the roof, really, when you think about it. And there was a lot of this for a weather balloon, wasn't there, John? A lot of money, time, effort, and than just for a big balloon floating about.
And then here's the other thing too that happened, which I find fascinating, was who did they put in charge of the CIA in 1947? But this guy here, Hillenkoetter, who became, the first director of the Central Intelligence Agency, created by the National Security Act of 1947. And what did he do in the 50s to the 60s? Once he was finished with his work in the military, he formed NICAP, the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena. So the guy who ran the CIA, who supposedly knew nothing about aliens, none of this is like UFOs, none of this is weird things in the sky, don't believe any of it. It's all just weather balloons and swamp gas. But when I'm done being the director of the CIA, I'm going to go looking in and form a committee on weird aerial phenomena. What? Like, really?
Yeah, it makes you think, what did you see in the time you was... because when I look at these sort of men, Admiral Byrd, all these sort of men, they're not stupid. They're very serious military men. They're not known for a sense of humor or messing around. So when you form these sorts of things or do these sorts of things, and everybody else thinks, oh, they've lost the plot, I'm like, no, these are very serious men we're talking about.
Yeah. So if the weird aerial phenomena, that's right here, aerial phenomenon, if the weird aerial phenomena were just weather balloons, why form an entire national investigation committee on it? Right. You know what I mean? And why is the guy who ran the CIA right after Roswell, who handled the debris from Roswell, interested in aerial phenomenon? It's just such a weird... It's such a weird
appointment right there, isn't it?
Like, if that's all a coincidence, that is such a weird coincidence, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it can.
Yeah.
Knowing any form of government or whatever, right? Especially like Cy was saying, during those times, right? Like maybe everyone's government isn't quite as serious now, but you better believe those people, after the war and up until the late 60s, at least in this country, all very serious people.
Yeah.
Very serious. And
Hi, Kenny.
what's up, Kenny?
For
Yeah,
the
that's
record,
that's too telling. That's too telling. You know, it's like
Yeah, it's on the nose too
it's
much.
yeah, on the nose. Very too much on the nose. Too much.
Yeah, it definitely. If anyone is coming here, they're definitely using a technology that we don't understand, because our rules and what we know of physics means that it would take far too long for them to get here. Even if they're at the closest star system, it would take them hundreds of years, and it's not like it's not something that you could do on a regular basis. Like, it seems like these things are here. They're here, like you were saying, Cy. It's like sightings are going up, and it's almost like they're somewhere in the world almost every single day.
Yeah.
So it's like they're here all the time, it seems like,
Well,
So
that's why I just don't think like for that wise, like I said, if there was the crash and everything was saying is true, and it came and it was in the 50s and Roswell was all this and that's the case, we still to this day have not sussed out that technology of how they got here, because we're still on the same old format of what we use today. Even talking about electricity like it's a new thing for cars, it isn't, but I think we're a long way from that.
Yeah, and with all the technological advances in the last few years of rockets and space travel and stuff like that, we're still using the same technology, right? We're still using basically the same type of combustible fuel to shoot the rocket off. There's no which that would be the key, right? Like if they are traveling as far and as fast as they are, right? They're not using jet fuel.
No. And for us, like, that'd be the golden, that would be the goose egg, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
For us as humans, that technology of how they did it, how they came through the universe like that to us would be the golden egg. That's so that's how I know that not necessarily we've
something that we
it.
could even replicate. That might be the only thing, right? Like the ship has a fuel tank. And if that's the first trip and the ship has a fuel tank and the fuel tank is empty by the time they crash, then there wouldn't be anything for us to study.
No.
Yeah. I like this technology we don't understand. I used to watch my nan try to change the telly with her glasses case, so it ain't.
Stop working, Chris.
We don't understand.
Yeah,
That's you go. Right. That's right, Jono.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, I think that what we got with Roswell is a situation where, like, I hope that it's real. I guess that's kind of my thing. Like I want it to be real, like, so bad that I think it would be so cool if aliens have visited our planet. And I do think it's an awful strange coincidence that right after the crash, like by the end of the month, you've got them signing into law this National Security Act. Why didn't we need national security when we were in World War II? Like someone else brought up, from the late 30s into the early 45 or whenever it ended. Like, that would have been the time where we needed national security more than anything. Like,
right.
So why not
do
it then?
It was just not geared toward aerial phenomenons.
Yeah. And then the other coincidence is having the guy who runs the CIA, the first guy running the CIA that got his hands on the debris from Roswell, suddenly forms an aerial phenomenon national committee. Like, it just seems, and that's before Project Blue Book and before Project Grudge and before Project Sign. Sign, I think, started as a result of him forming NICAP. Their first project looking into UFOs was Project Sign. And then in the late 50s, they went into Project Grudge. And by the 60s going in, we got the famous Project Blue Book, where J. Allen Hynek and them worked on, So
yeah,
it's like we had almost 3 decades of people looking into this phenomenon publicly. The government was publicly announcing their committees and things that were looking into it, and then they went silent. They went secret. They said they closed Blue Book and there was nothing to it. and they went silent from then on until recently when we just found out about A-Tip and Arrow, you know, and
The thing
found
is,
out
for
the
the world
government
today,
had been
though, John,
spending
I
millions
mean,
of dollars all this time.
they're all
What?
convinced that, you know, we talk about Roswell like it came from outer space, but a lot of the talk today is they've actually been here. They've been here for hundreds of years. Half of them live in the seas, half of them are in the Antarctic. They live in these dwelling dens that no human can visit.
That's
So
true.
necessarily, for all we know, they could have come out the sea. They're doing a survey
Yep.
view, and that's when it crashes. There's no need for it to come all the way from outer space or that sort of tech if they're already here. I like how the world today is telling you basically that they are, you know. So
Yeah.
it's funny how, like you said, little things tie into it over, you know, you do get your answers in time. And because we've had a good 70 years of this, there's a lot of black answers through decades. And the way that, especially in Congress, is going at the moment by dropping these things off, even now they're not hiding anything. They're saying, we don't know as well as you don't know. You know, all this, you know, they've been asked, do you have alien material? Yes, we do. Do you have alien bodies? Yes, we do. You know, so it's, I think in my lifetime, I think we definitely will know. I think that's something that can't be hidden. I think it's hidden in a lot of ways because of people's beliefs and religions over thousands and thousands of years. Like what Lack said before, you can't just knock thousands of years just because somebody say so, you know.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why it's hidden, but
there is something to be said about that. One of the guys in the chat earlier said something about the religious angle of it, and there is something to be said about it. And if you really think about things, like from the time that Project Blue Book closed up, you know, in like J. Allen Hynek and the French guy, who was the French guy? They actually spoke to Spielberg when he made Close Encounters.
he based him on it, didn't he? In Close Encounters, he based
yeah, and
I can't remember.
Yeah, and so you have to start wondering. Like some people have said today that all of this was slowly sort of like taking us step by step as a society to where now we're more open to the like if you took a poll in the 60s, even with all the sightings and Project Blue Book and stuff going on, like half the people would have freaked out. You know what I mean? And they even said that in some of their reports where they were like, well, our report and our finding has suggested that we better keep if aliens do come, we better keep it under wraps because this percentage of the people would literally just freak out. Where now, if you take that poll today, it's only like 5% of the people that would freak out. The rest of us would be like, well, we kind of figured it all along.
Yeah, the rest
you know
of
what
us
I mean? Like,
know.
you know what I mean? Like, let's put this to the chat too. Like, how many of you guys in the chat would instantly go ape shit if they did come out tomorrow and say, you know what, guys, aliens are real. They've been here all along, and we're now going to start working with them. Here you go, meet, go back, and he's going to tell you about interstellar travel and how it works. You know what I mean? Would you lose your shit? Would you just suddenly go outside and start pumping shotgun shells into all your neighbors and running around screaming with your arms in the air? I mean, no.
Make a run to Radio Shack to get some free shit.
I think most people would just get up tomorrow and go to work, and then they'd be talking about it at work. Like, that was weird. Did you see the thing last night about the alien Geblicka who's talking about? They just be like,
well, the trouble might be,
you know,
if they do ever announce, okay, well here are the I am the president and I'm here to tell you there are aliens. It's me, you know, like that would be maybe part of because if they are here, that would be the next thing, right? It would be like Rowdy Piper with his glasses. You'd be like, there might be a little, even those of us that might, okay, it's real and we're not freaking out. But after you had a time, after you slept on it, you thought, well, now wait a minute, is John an alien?
Yeah.
Is that, why are they looking at me like that? Is that, are they an alien? Is the queen and the presidents and the czars and are they all aliens? So
do you think that's the answer then, Lack? Do you think like what John said? Do you think because they're collected, the human race are stupid? We are. When there's overwhelming majority of us, we're chaotic. Do you think that's one of the reasons why it isn't told? We're not, told about any truth that goes on. Because we're too stupid. But there's
It's,
too many of us.
depending on what the truth may be, because there are lots of questions, not just the alien thing, right? But um, and I sure like to believe that, I used to have a lot more love and faith in humanity, but you are right. It's a person can, I can't remember who said this, but a person can be smart.
Yeah.
The three of us having a conversation and going through all the points open-mindedly, right? We can be smart and we can come to some conclusion that may not be what we believed 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But when you get the mob, when you get everyone together and the sensationalism, then yeah, that absolutely could be I mean, look at all the things that's gone on in the last however many years. Riots,
Yeah,
hurricanes, and stuff. So, Mr. B, how you doing? But the other side of that coin is, the truth could set us free.
Yeah.
You
yeah,
know, and I would think that most governments are more scared of that situation than
but that's
everybody
it.
going.
Like, what would the cost of that be? What would the cost actually be of that? That
Yeah.
yeah, we
Well, I
would
think
get
that
the freedom of
the
thought,
cost
but
that the governments today that they would be worried about would be that the truth would set us free, right? And we would start questioning, well, if this is how it works, then why are we, treated this way? If there's all these
yeah,
multiple things that could be going on, and I'm trying to be vague, not to get too on the nose with shit, but like I grew up in the woods, right? This is the best analogy. I grew up in the woods and I felt free and I did whatever I needed to do and whatever I wanted to do. And no construct of society or anything like that made me think or do anything, right? And moving out from the wilderness and coming to society, coming to America, I can feel that, right? And so any new information could possibly set people's minds free to the world of independence, where all of a
yeah,
sudden a lot of these people making a lot of money being our overlords is not necessary, right? And like
Yeah. And
the free energy that may be coming
yeah.
from a starship would do that, right? If we all
Yeah.
lived on our own 2 acres and grew our
But
whatever and made it into fuel and purified our own water, all of this shit that
yeah.
we pay for, that we go to work and do our hours, and it all
And
becomes unnecessary.
I think you'd even start questioning whether or not you needed a financial system in the entire setup the way we have.
Oh,
Because
exactly.
if you think about this for a minute, like let's say that it is. I remember there was. I think it was a Next Generation episode. I want to say it was a Next Generation one, but it could have been a Deep Space Nine. I don't remember exactly, but there was a Star Trek episode where they went to another planet and they met with the Federation leaders, met with the leaders of that planet. There was a whole episode on this, and those leaders of that planet decided that their society was not ready to learn about people from other planets and to learn about the Federation of Planets, that there's this group of planets all working together. And by the end of the episode, they had agreed to leave that planet alone. And in fact, I think they put a beacon out there in space somewhere out like 3 or 4 planets away, so that when anyone approaching that star system could see, like, it would just tell them on a radio message or a subspace message that, please don't land on any of these planets. They're not ready to join the galactic community yet. We're gonna abide by their decision and leave them alone for another 50 years or whatever, and then we'll come back
Mhm.
and see where they are as a society
Mhm.
then, and if they're ready to join,
Yeah.
because
yeah,
I think they had certain technologies that would allow them to join the Federation, but it's just their society was so closed in the way that they think that they weren't ready to accept other planets having life.
Mhm.
So by the end of the episode, they honored that agreement and they left, And you got to think, like, what if that wasn't entirely fiction?
Right.
What if there, because some people who have supposedly, they claim that they've made contact with aliens and They've been, I don't know whether you want to call it, been abducted or invited onto a ship or whatever, and they come back and tell us, yeah, there is something like a galactic federation. There is a group of planets, a group of alien races working together, and some of them even said there's 5 different races of species of aliens from 5 different star systems that are working together, and they've invited us to join them, but we're not ready yet. And one of them looks like us. They're taller than us and they're thinner than us, and they all have blonde hair. They call them the Nordics. And then we've got the Zeta Reticuli, and we've got the Reptoids from Draconis, and all these other, and there's people from Alpha Centauri, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And so, and there's Sirius and Orion, there's people from different star systems. But like, think about this for a minute. If that were true, and then all of a sudden our government and governments around the world all say, okay, we've reached that point, like in that Star Trek episode, where now they're back and we're ready to open up and tell society that, hey, there is this galactic federation out there, and we're going to be accepted into this group of planets to all work together, and we're going to now start venturing out into space with the aid of these other races, and building our own ships and going out to visit other planets and do stuff. Yeah. Like, if you had
there wouldn't be anybody working at McDonald's anymore.
If you had the option of going, like getting on a starship that's going to go out and explore other galaxies or other planetary systems, would you go? And if you did want to go, do you have to bring money with you? Like, isn't that a weird concept? Like, don't you think everything on a starship would be self-contained and self-running? Yeah. Like, you wouldn't
need a good blaster by your side.
It doesn't sound like you'd have to go to the galley and pay $10 for a cheeseburger at the galley. Right. You know what I mean? Like, you would just go down there at lunch when you're hungry and get a cheeseburger, right? I mean,
well, let me say this: what you were just speaking of in that Star Trek episode, we do that on this planet already. We do that. There's a and I wish I could name all the names, right? But what's the island in the Indian Ocean that's governed by India, and there's a group of people that live on it, right? And everybody knows they're there.
Yeah, and they don't want to integrate. Yeah.
Right. It's been collectively decided that we, as a Earth, right? We as a worldly population are not going to go there, right? And it's protected. And so we do that exact thing on this planet, at least on that one island,
Yeah.
There might be other cases, but so it's certainly not a far-fetched idea.
Not unheard of, yeah. And then you could argue that that's where whoever wrote that episode got the idea from. It doesn't have to come from aliens or something. I mean,
I definitely agree with TJ. There's definitely something to be said. Like I was saying before, if individuals discuss and put forth all the ins and outs and all the things that the little bit that we do know, it would be quite closed-minded to think we're the only thing. In the entire multiple of universes, universe-I, whatever it would be, multiple universe.
Yeah, for me, it's what we're capable of in my lifetime. And when you look at your history and you go back each previous 500 years and how barbarian the 500 years previous was, we'd be a bit ignorant to say that, if we ever put these populations on Mars, think of how our cloning techniques would be by then. Think of, we grew a mouse on the back of an ear 30 years ago. We cloned a sheep 40 years ago. So it makes you think that in 500 years, 400 years, where is that going to go, as well as us moving to different planets?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that if we did do that and we did inhabit another planet, that we'd actually put ourselves there. I think it would be a vast improvement on us, in a sense, maybe cut out that DNA of the chaos and the terror that we can create, and you never know, do you?
Well, like Smith Lord just said, he said, well, we can't even get along with each other. Why would aliens want to come here? Imagine the possibilities. And again, this goes back to the power which the overlords hold over us as the serfs on the fiefdom, or the fiefs on the serfdom, whichever way it goes. But imagine the camaraderie that would come together if we did find out, okay, now we're not British and American or this or that. We are human beings.
We are all
Yeah.
Earthlings or whatever. Yeah.
And that to me would be one of the first controlling powers that the governments have that would may become meaningless.
Do you think though?
Yeah.
That like if we did join, speaking of all of us becoming like Earthlings, one Earth, so we'd all be Earthlings. Do you think we'd be the laughing stock of like the Federation though? Because they'd all be like, "We are Klingons, we are Vulcans, we are Romulans. You guys are Earthlings. Why can't we have a better name than that? Why do we have to be Lings?"
Well,
You know what I mean?
they might not call it Earth. They might not call it Earth. We might be something else.
Okay.
And I would think if they're an advanced civilization, they can't, to be technologically advanced and to be traveled, and we've seen this in the history of our own world in times, you also have to be intellectually advanced. So I would think, unless it's some, if they want to come down here and suck all of our blood and kill us, that's one thing. But if they are truly a federation of intellectual beings, there's probably some pretty interesting things that go on this planet, that would be, they would probably be almost as in awe of us as we would be of them, right?
Yeah.
I would think, because, a lot of us, we respect past cultures, and we always talk about, even small things like, oh, how hard, our granddads grew up, and how tough life was, during the Dust Bowl, and like where Cy lives, like, could you imagine just walking down your street like during World War II and the air raid siren comes on and here comes the Luftwaffe? There's a lot of things that we admire about people of our ancestry. So why wouldn't that same kind of ideas come up from an alien race to us? I'm sure we have to have.
Yeah.
We're the only planet that we know of for a long distance that's like ours. That would make us unique in some way. They probably think, wow, this guy's tough. Look at this atmosphere. Look at all this shit that they breathe and all the poisons, and they survived. We might be really cool to them for all we know.
That's one in Star Trek, one in Next Generation, when Picard's talking to the fleet, and he says that no matter what each alien brings, we all bring something unique, and we all can learn off each other in any same sort of way. And then when you look at Valerian, City of a Thousand Planets, when it's us that actually started, we put the space hubble up, and everybody starts adding and adding. But we meet the first alien race, and basically they're like, meet the neighbors. And they know loads of others, and you know what I mean? So that's what moves it on. I do think if science is to believe what it is to believe, and we'll live in this vast entity of just, infinity, nothingness, just more bigger than you can even fathom, we've got to be ignorant to think we're the only ones, haven't we? We have to be. We really, really do. My point of view, we do. I think we find different galaxies and different systems every single day, don't we? Every single day, the more better technology we get, and cameras we get, and satellites we get, and what we're putting out there, it's amazing what we get back monthly. Amazing.
Yeah.
So we'd be pretty ignorant to think that. But that's how we are. Like Lord of the Rings says, above all, men desire power, don't they? Do you know what I mean? And that's the truth. We like to think we're the first, don't we? And so.
Well, and even that, is that a construct of modern, modern totalitarian? Is that what the powers that be want us to believe, right? Because if we're all out there chasing, the same people that tell us every man wants power are the same people that say, well, this group doesn't like this group, and so, where's the infinite being that says, we are all one. We're all hairs on the sentient being, and only through us can the sentient being learn and experience all things, right?
Yeah.
You know what, lad? For all we know, we probably were, and we probably were there, and they probably kicked us out about 100 years ago when
They
things
might
let
have.
it
You
go.
never
They're too
know.
much trouble, them humans. Off you go.
We're the
I
Australians.
would be super interested. I would be super interested in talking to aliens about their religion. You know,
Yeah.
They even have one.
you know,
know what I
because
mean?
like you know, let's just if they might turn around and say, oh well, there's only one great spirit, and he made all of us, and you go, wow, even the aliens say that. That's crazy,
yeah, that would be fun.
and and they might have a different name and all this kind of stuff.
Finding
but-
similarities would be mind blowing actually, because then you'd start questioning, wow, is some of this real?
Yeah.
But I want to go back and touch on a couple things that were in the chat here. So someone had mentioned like why are they sitting around watching us destroy ourselves, destroy the planet and stuff like that? And this discussion used to come up in my family, and not necessarily about aliens, but like why the world hasn't ended. Because we, in our, like me being 50 years old, I've already lived through, now people older than me have lived through more events that could have ended the world. But what I'm trying to say is that even people my age or younger have already lived through a couple events that could have ended the world. And like what used to come up in our conversations as a family was my brother said, there's one of two things going on. Either there is some kind of higher power, like say aliens or something like that, that intervenes at a certain point all the time, or we are living in a computer simulation, which could be a thing for a whole nother episode. But he said his reasoning behind it was that when we were growing up, we were told that if we didn't find more sources of oil, the economy would go to crap. We were seeing lines in the 70s down the block. People were waiting 6, 8, 10 hours a day just to fill their car. And if we didn't find something else, the whole world was going to go to shit because the economy was going to collapse. There'd be wars, there'd be famine, everything would go to hell. And at the moment where we were at the tipping point, they suddenly found enough oil to where we lasted all the way till today.
Right.
How are we out of oil as a planet in the 70s, and suddenly we found enough oil to last all the way to 2025? You know what I mean? And like, I mean, at the time we were having this discussion, it was probably like 2019 or something like that. But anyways, so you get the point. Like, and we've never had a catastrophe since then related to that. And then in the 80s, they went, there is a giant hole in the ozone. The hole is so big that the radiation coming through, if you live under that thing, you're getting fried and you're going to die like 40 years earlier than anybody else who isn't living under the hole. And the hole's getting big enough to where the point where if we keep putting fluorocarbons and things like that from our hairspray and cars emissions and all these things up into the atmosphere, it's going to be gone and all life on Earth is going to die. And it got down to the day where they were like, if we don't stop this today as a world, we're dead. All life on the planet's going to die. And that suddenly, that day, the whole world stopped using that hairspray and stopped using those carbons. How do you get the whole world to agree to that in a matter of a couple days? You can't. So something intervened. Something intervened and stopped the world from producing those things. And now the ozone's back to normal, and there's no problem with it again. And then you had a situation in the 60s where they were like, we're going to go to nuclear war. It was so bad that children were sitting in their schools being trained to get under their desks because any moment now, nuclear bombs were going to go all over the earth. Everything was going to be destroyed. And somehow, all of a sudden, everyone agreed, you know what, nuclear bombs are so bad, none of us ever set them off, we'll agree not to do anything, mutually assured destruction, blah blah blah, to the point where now we're not building bomb shelters. Like every family had a bomb shelter in their backyard. Who has one now? None of us. We're not building bomb shelters. We're not having drills in our schools and going
Speak
under
for yourself.
You know what I
and yet
mean?
we've never been as close to the doomsday clock as we are today. So, they're threatening this with the news. You think we'd all be building shelters and having all
yeah,
that
right.
the way the news tells you.
Maybe
Yeah,
we've been
right.
conditioned that whatever it is that stops this all the time, from whatever stops us from ending the world, whether it's a natural disaster or something man-made or war, whatever keeps stopping us from destroying the world, whether it's aliens or a computer program or some godlike being or whatever it is, it's we're now used to it stopping it, so now we're just like, whatever it is, we'll stop it again. Like with global warming
Yeah.
or this climate change thing, we're all worried about it, but you don't see anybody doing anything about it, really.
Well,
We're all just sitting back on what's going to happen. It's going to happen.
We'll fix that,
But
John. That's fine.
one day it's just suddenly going to be like, we're not going to think about it anymore, and they're going to go, you know what, the climate corrected itself, and we're going to be like, how?
No. Imagine a planet that's been around for billions of years, because I come from a place where the Earth is a living thing,
Yeah.
And I
Shabby
think it takes much more than shabby. I think it's going to take much more than we could ever do, unless we all set our nukes off at the same time, maybe. But even then, we as a species may be gone, but who's to say the Earth is gone?
Yeah.
None of us are going to be here to know. Do you remember that? I was going to say, you remember the acid rain that was going to wipe out all the crops, and we're all going to starve?
Yeah, that too. Yeah, acid rain was going to destroy everything.
I remember that. Yeah. That was a big one when I was a kid. Everybody was worried about
JT says, I don't think the ozone's back for a while. Okay, well, maybe it's not. I don't know.
Well, and you know what the other side of that coin is? And I'm just being devil's advocate, so don't get all upset. But the other side of that coin is that all that shit that we were told was bullshit.
Yeah, that's true.
That could all be the same people that told us it's a weather balloon. Because fear does control the masses and keeps us placated, right? Because all the powers that be want us to do are be the serfs on the fiefdom and work for them. Like that is the end all be all that these people want. These corporations and entities that want to keep us in the dark about whatever the thing possibly could be.
But I always think that, though, it's like, when you think about the end of the Earth's time, that's it, everything's done, go back to being the black blemish. Is that going to be man-made or natural? Because to me, it sounds more like we're going to destroy it ourselves, and it would be just dying of old age, if you'll have me. I just think we've got, we get given everything that's absolutely wonderful, all aligned perfectly, and we ruin it on I'm not saying on the vast majority of us all, because vast majority don't, but there's that small power majority that just have to just destroy it, what we've been given. And it does make you think sometimes, doesn't it?
I actually don't think it's possible, barring a natural disaster. Like I think that something large enough has to crash into the earth, like a moon or a giant freaking 50-mile wide comet or something, to kill every last human. And even then I might question it, because we're at a point now where, what is there? There's over 8 billion people. We're climbing towards 9 billion people. Do you really think we could kill all 9 billion? Someone somewhere on the planet's going to be hiding in a cave or underwater or somewhere way out in this field that's just the perfect amount of space from every settlement, and they're going to live through it. You know what I mean?
Well, how many human type species has there been before us? They've just discovered another one. We're up to 6 or 7. And and most of us all carry the DNA of somewhat of the last couple.
Yeah.
Right?
Because I guess, to B's point, he goes like, an asteroid wiped out the dinosaurs, but did they? Because the birds are dinosaurs. You know what I mean? So something survived that's still representative, even to this day, of their species, albeit drastically different than what we would see as a T-Rex or a Brontosaurus. But I mean, it's like a small percentage of them that were little and bird-like managed to live to this day. So
And you take something like the crocodile, it's
it
very closely
it
related to the
it was
crocodile from
basically
that
the same,
time,
yeah,
you know,
because it was underwater when the stuff hit. You know what I mean?
wherever it
So that's
was.
what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
And
So
I think um
so
okay.
even when we've had catastrophic events of asteroids or comets hitting the Earth that destroyed 99% of the life on Earth, something survived. So and is rebuilt to what it is today. So it's like every time we've had a major extinction, something has lived and life kept going. So I
Mhm.
kind of feel that way even about human beings, not just life on Earth, but even human beings on Earth. Now that we've got this many billions of people, somewhere, some corner of the planet, some little nook, even if everybody else died, there'd be a family or 3 or 4 people who lived. And like by chance, it would be like 2 men and a female, or 2 women and 1 man, or something. And it would slowly just repopulate. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and,
it's quite possible.
and I mean, like, societies have collapsed, but the human race goes on. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like we watched the Roman society collapse. You could argue Egypt collapsed. You could argue Sumeria, Babylonian, all these different, the Persians, like everything basically built up to this big thing of society, but they all collapsed down into like, almost like a tribe was left and they weren't that world empire anymore.
Yeah.
So but the human race continued on, even though from their perspective, like when the Roman Empire ended, they owned like all the Mediterranean surrounding it and like parts of Africa. Like that was a giant empire. And
Mhm.
when it collapsed, it was no longer Rome. It was no longer the Roman Empire, but human beings still lived.
Yeah.
Society collapsed, it fell apart, but human beings still lived.
Well,
Millions
even
probably died, but it's like the race went on. So I feel like that's what would happen today if we had a
even the
global
Roman,
catastrophe.
even the Eastern Roman Empire, right, turned into the Byzantine Empire. So they,
Yeah,
it wasn't a complete loss of their culture, even,
Yeah.
they just moved to Blackpool.
What did the bloody Romans do for us?
I think Randall Carlson has said it takes maybe like a 6 mile wide asteroid to do, to look at something like a 75% extinction.
Yeah.
Um, and of
Bye,
course, that's
TJ.
mainly hey, take care, TJ. At least from the past, right? Like the Younger Dryas when the asteroid hit and then warmed the planet to melt the ice caps to cause a flood. I think we had like a 75% extinction of the megafauna, right? There was quite a lot of other smaller species that survived and then
Yeah.
evolved. Some of them we don't. Where I grew up in Alaska in the Tanana Valley, there's 2 species of marmots and I think 3 species of ferns, and they're the only ones like it on the planet, and they're left over from the last ice age. Because in where I grew up, there was a corridor of no ice, and
Huh.
so right in the middle of Alaska, which like they used to tell us it was an ice bridge, but now we know it was actually a land bridge. But this whole middle section, the Tanana Valley, was not covered. It was in between the 2 ice caps.
Interesting.
And yeah, like if you can look up in like Denali National Park is where they really study. But there's I think 2 marmots and 3 species of ferns, and they are from the Ice Age, and they're still there. And they're the only ones on the whole planet.
Hey, Delvian.
Wow. But like
Oh,
you, like growing up in the wilderness and stuff, I mean, like if you saw anything through them woods or like in the skies or anything that was unexplained, I think you probably have more of an open mind to that because there's not that society buzz around you telling you that it isn't in a sense, do you know? So did
Yeah.
you ever have any of them experiences
Oh,
or anything like that?
we had lots of experiences, and then being in Alaska, right? You do get to see a lot of airplanes. A lot of the places you go are in airplanes, so people have a lot of experience with that. You get to see satellites quite a bit, and like where I grew up, there was no, like I grew up in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, and the closest city was about 68 miles away. It was Fairbanks. And on a good night in the winter, you could see a dome of light, and that was the city, right? But it was way over there, and it was small, maybe like half a beach ball size in your vision. And but me and my dad and my granddad and even a cousin of mine came and visited me. But we saw stuff all the time, but you would see an airplane, okay, that's an airplane. You would see a satellite, and they all usually go the same direction. They have the same speed. And then we would see stuff that at least you'd have to say that is an unidentified flying object,
Mm-hmm.
A blue light that was way too big to be an airplane, something that would move erratically and then disappear. Or I used to always see the three, which until I didn't know this until I moved to America. But like the three blue blinking lights that make a triangle, that's like everybody sees that. We saw that a lot, in the middle of the wilderness all the time. And I had a cousin who was from down here. He always wanted to hunt moose in Alaska. We said, come up. And he's one of the best human beings I know. But like very staunch Christian and believes, and he's a good guy. And I was telling him, I was like a younger kid, and I was telling him, man, I hope you get to see a UFO, and he really kind of, shit on that, because that questioned like his religion and different things like that. And I was telling him one night, about him, and he kind of, I don't want to say get on a soapbox, because he's a very nice, polite guy, but he was giving me the business about how that's got to be absolute baloney, And luckily, I got to tap him on the shoulder and say, well, what is that then? And he looked, and his entire world changed, because he saw something, and he's an educated guy. He knew that was not an airplane. That was not a satellite. That was not a weather balloon or swamp gas. And it changed his life, and that was 20 something years ago. And he still talks about that to this day. And he knows what he saw, and he knows it's not any of the things that we're told, that it's not, right? But yeah, we saw all kinds of stuff. And yeah, it's growing up in that culture, there was a lot of things that we just knew it, whether it was Bigfoot or, there were creatures that lived in the water and all those cryptids, like we just knew. So when you see an object that's flying around and then takes off like that and it's gone, you go, oh shit, that was an alien.
Yeah.
Like, what else?
I got one follow up here for you, Lack. I don't think we ever touched on this when we were talking, or even up to this point as friends. You said that you have people in your family history, your family tree, that are, because you guys are from that Alaskan Arctic area, like going way back, right? Your family?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my grandfather's wife, yeah.
So you have, what are they Inuit or Eskimo? Like what?
My grandfather was Inupiaq Eskimo.
Inupiaq, okay.
Yeah,
and that is a native, that essentially is like a native of that area of the world, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So they go back hundreds of years, like thousands of years?
Probably thousands.
So do they have the same, what I'm getting at is, growing up, were you in that culture? Like, did you know people who lived that style of life that were not totally acclimated to, say, like city life?
Mostly,
like people that were still hunting and gathering and doing, you know what I mean? And like, held on to the old stories.
Yeah.
Like the stories that were transmitted by word of mouth. You know what I mean? Like, does anyone when you were growing up, did anyone hold on to that stuff?
Yeah, it's not as prevalent as it should be, but it is much more prevalent. It is much more prevalent than a lot of other natives, like in the lower 48, right? Alaska, first of all, Alaska was discovered so late in society, and a lot of
been there.
Well, I mean, but it wasn't, like they use the word colonized and kind of.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
it was way later, that that the man showed up, right? And even when the Russians were there, so much of Alaska is so vast that you weren't going to take a wagon train across Alaska and
No,
yeah, put them
yeah.
on in the
You'd
reservation.
fall in a crevasse and just disappear.
Yeah, there's just a lot of it wasn't possible. There was a big push in the 60s to take native indigenous children and put them in schools. But it was enforced quite heavily. But again, there were people that were so remote, and like these, didn't have social security cards and never met a census agent.
Gotcha.
So not everyone was indoctrinated in that sense.
Because the reason I ask is I want to know if there were any stories growing up or if you're aware of stories within that culture. Because, like, I don't know anybody who's a native, what you would call a Native American, like what lived down here, like the Apache but supposedly I have Mohawk. My great grandmother was a Mohawk Native American, of the Mohawk tribe.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So that makes my grandmother half. And then my mom was a quarter, so I'm an eighth.
Yeah.
I guess.
Eighth.
So something like that. So but anyways, I never heard any of the stories growing up. I don't know anybody. Even though I did meet my great grandmother when I was young, she died probably when I was 6 or 7. But I never heard. If I did hear anything, it never stuck in my brain. Mm-hmm. But I do hear from other people that there are stories in the Apache, in the Hopi Nation, in the Comanche, and stuff like that, that they used to talk with the sky spirits, the sky gods, the sky people. Like they used to sit around and they would descend, land, come out of their craft, and talk with them. And and then when they would leave, like their stories would say those were the sky people. Those were the people who live in the sky. You know what I mean? And today we would call them aliens.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
do the Inuits and Eskimo and
the only stories
do they
I've
have
heard,
those kind of stories about
the only
sky
stories
people?
I've ever heard, and I don't recall anybody landing in a spaceship, but they were always beings from somewhere else. And then a lot of anything up there that looks like a human is a spirit. But of course, some of them go into the mud, and some of them go into the sky, and some of them disappear. And a lot of what we would consider extraterrestrial stories all revolve around the aurora borealis, the northern lights.
Oh, okay.
And there was when I was a kid, all the old people, there were certain things if the northern lights were out, there were certain things that you didn't do because they would come and they would take you away. And there was always stories of people being taken by the lights.
Really?
And something would happen, generally, I don't remember anybody, talking about waking up on a gurney or whatever, but they would have an experience. And generally, some people would have an enlightened experience and some people would have a nightmarish experience, and a lot of the time people would then be returned. And then there were other people who, they've seen people taken by the lights and never seen again,
Wow. Yeah.
So there's very, and it would be interesting to go back and, because when I was a kid, when I heard these stories, right, some of them I didn't think of, oh, well, that's something we would call an alien.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I was so immersed in it, it would be a spirit or a being from another dimension, another world. And I was talking to somebody the other day, even if you read the Bible and you replaced if you replaced the word angel with alien.
Yeah.
What does it change? Does it really change the overall story of the book? Not really.
Yeah.
And just we call dinosaurs dinosaurs, but why don't we call them dragons?
Yeah.
It's the same kind of. But
yeah, they probably should be called dragons because, you know, you got to think like, yeah, if they found these big bones back in the
Right. If it's painted in a cave in every continent, then there must be some sort of truth to it, right?
yeah. The
But I don't.
Makila,
I certainly
the
don't
Makila
remember.
Mbembe, the
I certainly
Makila
don't remember
Mbembe.
any spaceships. You know, I
Well,
don't remember.
I'm just saying that like they descended from the sky. I don't know if it was. I don't know if they talk about a craft or not. But I feel
Yeah,
like I'd heard them say stuff like the natives have tales of things descending from the sky
yeah.
people talking to them and returning back to the sky. So I
Hmm.
think my brain just fills in that
We
has to
don't
be a
have too many.
craft.
We don't have too many stories that are like lessons. Like a lot of the stories we have is, like Raven stole the sun, from the great being to bring us the sun. And a lot of our like traditional stories of creationism or whatever is mostly based on that. But there's a lot of individual stories and accounts from the old days of being taken by the northern lights or people disappearing in a light and in a smoke, which definitely sounds like what they would do to a cow in Kansas, right? Like the
Yeah.
the uh the classic drawing of it. But yeah, if you live in the wilderness and you watch the earth turn and you don't have electricity and you look at the skies and you see the seasons change, and it's really hard to not believe in a lot of this other stuff, right? Because it's
Yeah,
easy to realize when you're not locked in your apartment or whatever. It's very easy to realize that there is a whole nother level of things going on that are
Yeah.
completely beyond our comprehension. You
Yeah.
know, and that's
Oh,
why all ancient beings and primitive beings are highly religious and highly spiritual.
yeah.
Because living in the woods, like I said, when you watch the earth do what it does and the sun comes up in the same spot and the solstice and everything like that, you go, wow, there's something going on here that
You
is,
feel more
yeah,
connected to nature and the earth and the way things are.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess
yeah,
so. Yeah.
exactly.
Well, we're getting close to. We actually went past where I was hoping to wrap it up, but it's okay. We've had a great discussion today that's gone further
Yeah.
than I even thought it would. But
Oh, it was a pleasure.
to wrap it up and come back to our original topic, what do you think, Roswell? I mean, I kind of look at it as three possibilities. It was a balloon, it was aliens, or it was military technology that they felt they had to cover up. What's your take on that before
Go
we
ahead,
go?
Si.
For me, I believe it was aliens. I don't believe that they came from outer space. I believe they're the ones we talk about today that have always been here. And the reason so is the change of the world, technology, and worldwide since that event.
Hmm.
So, yes, I believe they were.
They're what we would classify as aliens, but you think that they've been here all along. They're just
Yeah, I do
like there's
think
a colony under
they're
the
a very, very
water or
distant,
wherever.
yeah, ancient people that have just been
Yeah.
here that are either here to watch over us, the security of us. I don't know.
And they just
But
have this advanced technology that's beyond what
yeah,
we understand. Yeah.
and we discovered it, and what we could use from that, we certainly have done. Because when you think of inventions and the way man thinks over decades now, people have got to remember that between man creating fire and the wheel was thousands of years in between. And
Yeah.
what we do now is like, again, like I said, every 5 years is something that changes the world.
Well, it blows my mind that you've got, yeah, like you said, you've got all that time, and even coming up into like medieval history where like we were using shields and swords and wagons and stuff all the way up until like the 18 into the 1800s, and then all of a sudden that's where you start hearing like that first crash was it that's been documented in the newspaper was in 1897, and all of a sudden we had like steam engines and then combustion gas engines,
Mm.
and suddenly we got computers and technology.
Mhm.
Like,
Got
how did we
flags.
do that? How did we do that
Yeah.
in 150 years? When it, like you
Mm.
said, it took us hundreds of thousands of years to figure out a freaking wheel. You know what I mean? Like,
In fact, and when I think that the 65 years between learning to fly and going to the moon, if
yeah,
that really is the case, then you've got to say Roswell played a massive part in that. Do you know what I mean? Fabrics for a
Yeah.
start to get us out this atmosphere, all sorts of different stuff. Because no human being thought like this previously.
And you got to
No.
think about it. People didn't think we could fly. People said it was
No.
impossible in 1900, and then in 1903 they were flying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like a few years later, they're not only just flying a few feet; they're flying across the world. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Mm.
what? You know,
Countries within
something that was
hours. You know, it's
impossible before. You know,
yeah.
like, yeah.
So I think
Yeah, I
that
would,
took a big jump up because of it. I
Yeah,
do.
maybe you're right.
I
Maybe.
would definitely agree with Cy and everything he said because it's just it's too on the nose, right? It's
Yeah.
too
Yeah.
quick, too fast. And the only other thing you could maybe attribute it to is, you know, modern society evolving. You know, like before we could farm wheat, there was not a lot of people who could dedicate time to figuring things out, right? You were too busy trying to chase woolly mammoths and pick berries and find fresh water and that kind of a thing. So, but the technology advance since 47 was drastic on all fields, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
like I said, continues to be. And yeah, the steam, I can't remember when the steam engine came out. I think that might have been more like the 1860s, but certainly
Well,
in after 1890, you know, we get the internal combustion engine, and you know, even Henry Ford had electric cars, you know, and
Yeah.
even pre Ford, I can't remember the name of that guy,
Yeah.
but you know, the one that had the tiller handle.
Yeah.
Quite a
Yeah.
bit of advancement post 47. So I would have to agree with Cy 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely, has to be something.
All right. I think we should leave everybody with this. Everyone go outside once in a while. Keep your eyes on the sky and always have your camera with you.
Exactly.
Cy Lack, thank you so much for joining today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thanks.
Yeah.
Been great.
And, we will
Great
chat
to see
again.
you, Cy. Great to see
Yeah,
you. I
brilliant.
might have been the first time we were on a stream together. So awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Won't be the last.
I hope not. I hope not. All the
We'll
respect in the world, my friend.
We'll chat again in a few weeks, and I'm still working on getting some guests. So yeah, what's very shocking is someone you might know from your neck of the woods here responded real quick. Hold on, why isn't this coming up? Oh, where the crap did he go?
Well, it always happens when you want it, doesn't it, John?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Technology. That obviously didn't come off the Roswell ship, did it?
No.
Yeah, right.
But again, that's another thing that we haven't just like look how advanced phones have come on in such a again short space of time. Was like intervene what happened in the 50s, put us on the next level of what the digital phone become. You never know.
Yeah, to go from a telegraph to a telephone, not
Yeah.
too much of a big difference. You know, you have a switchboard and all this kind of stuff, but then to go to your 5G tower, you know.
Yeah.
Nick Pope.
Yep, and we've been talking.
Oh,
So-
awesome! Right on. Right arm, as they used to say.
He was a former British government defense worker, in with the Secretary of Defense.
Oh,
wow.
he's somebody you should do
But
with getting on, John.
He's become a big famous UK UFO researcher, basically because of what he learned while he was in, So
Yeah, a
maybe
bit like
we'll
that
see.
guy, like you said, form the CIA, then form that after. Because what did he learn while doing that job? He must have learned something, John.
Well, and there's been lots of military in all around the world, right? But high-ranking military jet fighters and stuff, who have all said, "Well, I seen this," and even quite a few astronauts too, right? They've said they're out there. I've seen them. So it's
Yeah. Street code.
Hello. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Appreciate it. Stay awesome out there, everybody.
Appreciate
Cy,
it, guys.
Lack, thanks for being here. We'll talk again soon.
All right.
Bye-bye, everybody. Oh, and now's the uncomfortable point where we wait 16 seconds for